Howdy, your tube. I just wanted to get on here and share my thoughts. Not necessarily opinions, but just my thoughts on this new discovery, new research regarding no forests on a flat earth. It's intriguing. Very intriguing. Like, for example, when the gentleman shows you the comparison to, I think he used, what was it, flax? Or I forget which plant he used. He showed the fibers with the pattern. Then you have the rocks with that exact same pattern, which don't match magma. Then compared it to existing tree stumps. It's interesting. I've just been trying to wrap my head around the size of these trees. I mean, they had their own climates. You know what I mean? They were like way up in the clouds. Now, thinking about that also gave rise in thought to some research I did some years ago when I was still doing my broadcast regarding tall beings where we reside. And if I recall from and I used the Bible as a point of reference and a couple of other documents and did the math. From what I ascertained, now don't quote me on it and say, well, that's not true. I said these are my thoughts, so take it for what it is. From my calculations, I pegged Adam and Eve, for example, at about approximately 200 foot tall. Then you have the stories, also biblically speaking, of Goliath, or Goliath. I don't think it was actually Goliath. It was more like Goliath or something. He was a short giant, the son of the so-called giant, which was supposed to have been Nephilim. Are they real? I don't know. If they are, we're going to find out, I'm sure. This also took me down a line of thought. When you look at the movies that we are presented in Hollywood and what have you, they always, what's that one movie? I'll give you a classic example. What's the title of it? I forget. But the people are blue, and we went to that planet to mine the planet. Whatever that movie is called, I think y'all know what I'm talking about. They had giant trees. Other movies throughout time, you've had large trees with beings like fairies and gnomes and all that type stuff in our mythology and whatnot. The funny thing about mythology, a lot of that stuff is mostly true. So think about it. Do your own research on it. Just the names and the places and few details have been changed or omitted. Okay, Just so you know what I'm getting at there. For example, when you take the Bible, you take another story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. You compare those two. There are similarities across the board. Just the names are different. Check it out for yourself. But now, these giant trees, I do understand the importance in ecology of trees, the energy that they possess, the energy they release, take in. They're a very important part of our ecology and biology. And that makes me think about the Amazon. Why these fools are cutting down trees everywhere? I mean, I'm about to go there. What jackass in his right mind wants to cut down the things that produce oxygen so you can there's some people on this planet just plumb out of their fucking minds. Anyway, giant trees. It's perplexing. I've been thinking about, let's see, I watched the original video with the gentleman, I think he was Russian, correct me if I'm wrong. And he's showing a lot of the strip mining aspects of it. Like the Grand Canyon, for example. I never believed, even when I was a wee lad, that was created by water. I'm like, don't look right. That's not water. Water erosion. Oh, this rabbit hole is just, man, it takes off this way, goes that way, shoots off in that direction. That brings rising thought to another gentleman who was doing some star constellation matchups. And he found a correlation with the way the Grand Canyon was cut out to some constellations. Orion, if I'm not mistaken. He found a correlation to Orion. Now I found that interesting, if it's true, because you think back to Egypt, Orion, the layout of the pyramids, Orion's belt, those 3 stars at the bottom. There is so much that we don't know. Well, let me clarify that. Because I'm of a firm belief that we become dumber as time has gone on. There's been a lot of knowledge forgotten, a lot of knowledge hidden that only a few select know. See, right there is another topic. Those people are full of shit too. Because you look back, if you do your own research, you see that they had technology back then. Before we had electric wires, running electricity, all that. They had electricity. They were using gyroscopes. They had it all. You just think about the construction of many of the megaliths and monoliths all over this place. What? Kuma, oh man, I hate to mispronounce things. Puma something. Anyway, South America, Central America, here in the United States, you're all across Europe, China, everywhere. There is every Easter Island. I mean, the list goes on. There's evidence everywhere that technology was being used. And I know I've gone off on a tangent, but that's how these things go sometimes. You know how it is. I've talked about big giant trees, and now I'm talking about ancient technology. But it's all tied together. There's fine threads that connect everything. Everything. But just imagine if you had a tree based upon some of the proportions in that guy's video, they could have been easy 1,000 foot or more. So now, there's two questions. Were there beings walking around, and I'm talking about beings such as us, or close to it, that 1,000 foot tree was like you walking past an elm tree that's been alive for 200 years? You figure, now I ain't even mentioning redwood trees here. I ain't even there yet. Might not even go there. Might not have to. But like an elm tree, 200, 300 years old. You figure, because there's one right across the street. Let me think. I would give it an approximate 150 to 175 foot. To us, that's huge. Now the redwoods, they're even larger. So now, I forgot my own questions. That's how it is sometimes. Regarding the giant trees, if they were really existed, who cut them down and why? How? There are tales in our mythology, mythos, stories, fables of like Paul Bunyan, for example. He's supposed to be a huge guy. Swing an axe one time and wham, tree is down. Do we really know how tall he was? I don't know. So if we had beings in proportionate height to a tree that's 1,000 foot tall, it would be nothing with the technology that they probably had to cut those trees down. But it goes back to, why would you cut down something that beautiful and that magnificent? Guess we'll never know the answer to that. I tell you, y'all have heard me say it before, this rabbit hole, man, is deep. Man, it's deep. You know, I find myself a lot, always, whether I'm sitting in here, outside, or I'm driving around, and I'll talk, just normal conversation, to whatever's listening, you know, and ask them, you know, what's the problem? You create us in your image, and like they're listening now. Created us in your image. We've lost a lot of powers and abilities that we were gifted with. Some people still have them, to a small degree, very small percentage. So let's say if this place is flat and we're under a dome in a controlled environment, can you imagine them sitting up there just watching the madness down here? I mean, what's their excuse? The prime directive? We cannot interfere with the life of inferior species. We can't interrupt their development, you know. Yeah, some of y'all caught the Star Trek pun. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to belabor all this. Just wanted to share some of my thoughts on it. Because I'm sure some of you out there that have seen some of those videos or those vlogs on this no force on the flat earth, probably asking yourself a lot of the same questions in some of the conversations you're engaged in with other individuals. But I'm a firm believer that we will never learn the answer until that time when it's the end of time. And then it's going to be so simple. It's going to be like, oh man, you know, Occam's razor. It's going to be like, really? It was that simple? The tree was dying, so they had to cut it down. You know, something. It'll be something supremely sublime, supremely simple. But we're just making it so complex, trying to wrap our heads around it. Anyway, till next time, your tube. Peace and love. Love you all. Stay out of trouble if you can.